Hello and welcome to Slightly Nostalgic. My name is Griff, and we have watched Firefly episode 2, The Train Job. Like I said last time, this was the first episode that aired. It's also the first episode I watched, and I think it makes a better pilot than the actual pilot. They did know ahead of time that this would be the first thing that was aired, so they were able to write this as kind of a de facto pilot. It's like a pilot just shrunken into a normal length episode instead of being a two-parter, and I think it worked out really well. It starts with a bar fight instead of a war scene, like a flashback, and I think that works a lot better as an introduction to the show. It fits the tone of the rest of the show a lot better, and this scene also gets us on the crew's side, our main characters, right away, because they're fighting this guy who's just totally obnoxious. He's an idiot, and they're really clever about it and everything, and it's funny. So right away we're on their side, which is important because they're just doing straight up crime later. Like, they're doing kind of horrible things, they're working for horrible people, so it's important that we are on our protagonist's side at the beginning, so that later we're like, well, why these people are robbing a train? Why would I care what happens to them? It's also pretty noticeable right away that this episode has a much lighter tone. There's a lot of funny lines in this episode. Some of my favorite lines from the whole series are in this one, like the tragic space dementia, making you all paranoid and crotchety, terrifying space monkeys, all of them. The things Jane says, like about angels, and then did he just go crazy and fall asleep? Like, there's so many. I didn't realize how many of my favorite lines are in this episode. But Mal's character in particular, I noticed this time, is dramatically different from in the first episode. Like, he got a few jokes and funny moments in the pilot, but now that's like a big central part of his character, is that he's witty, he's always making jokes, and they actually have the other characters laugh sometimes when he makes jokes, which I really like about this show. I had never noticed that before watching it this time, but in most shows, when somebody says something funny, they just kind of move on. It's like, that was for the audience. The other characters don't even notice that a joke was said. I think it's funny that they cut over to, like, Kaylee giggling or everybody's laughing. There's a lot of scenes where it starts out with everybody laughing, which I think is cool. It makes them all seem more like real people. So the whole first 10 minutes or so of this episode is just kind of going character by character and introducing who they are, a little bit about them. They don't go into a lot of depth, but it's all very efficient, and it's not super obvious what they're doing. It just looks like people are milling about doing their thing on the ship, but we kind of follow them and get to know what everybody is and what they're doing pretty quickly. I think it works really well, instead of having everybody have their own whole scene explaining, okay, I'm the person with this story, and I have this stuff going on. And we also get a little bit of their relationships being established too. Right after all that, we see Niska for the first time, who is one of the best villains ever. This guy is so creepy. He's like a rich, kind grandfather who's just, he's just a happy, good-natured guy, except the things he does and says are horrific. Like, he's actually this cold-hearted sociopath, but his whole demeanor is just very pleasant and very rational. This actor, I don't know the actor's name, but he does such a good job with this. He's a really great character. Speaking of creepy characters, River actually seemed a lot creepier than I remember. I guess this is kind of when she's at her craziest, like, she doesn't really know where she is or what's going on, and it's all she's very chaotic, and nothing she says really makes any sense. I guess when I think of River, I think of River from the movie, and going back to this, I forgot how out of it she actually is, and how just removed from the rest of them she is. So now for some random small things I noticed. Jane starts out this episode clean shaven, and seems to gradually grow his beard throughout the episode, which doesn't, I mean, the whole episode takes place in what seems like a day at most. So I don't know, maybe his facial hair just grows really fast, but he's got pretty much a full goatee by the end of it. But at the beginning, he is clean shaven, like during the bar fight and everything. So I thought that was funny. I'd never really noticed that before. Also, Mal gets the scar that he has in the movie from when Crow throws that blade at him. It hits him in the shoulder. And I think later he's shirtless. Like later on in the show, they show him shirtless and he doesn't have the scar. But they remember to put it there in the movie, I think, which is pretty cool. The guy who played the sheriff, I noticed this time, was really good. That actor did a great job. He was a really good guest actor. I don't know who he is, but his accent was really believable and just everything. Like, he just seemed like just a good guy, just the town sheriff, and horrible things were happening in their town, and he was just trying to get to the bottom of it. Just, I don't know, that kind of stood out to me as, hey, that's a really good guest actor there. Okay, now let's talk about one of my favorite scenes in the whole series. I said last time that a scene in the first episode made me love the show, but I forgot about this scene in this one. I didn't realize it was in this episode, where they've won the fight against Niska's men, and they've got Crow and all of them tied up. And Mal is just like, okay, here's the money that Niska gave us. We're returning the money. The deal's off. Everything's fine. Just go explain to him that everything's good. And he just goes into this really serious speech, this dramatic monologue about how it doesn't matter where you go, we will find you, and all of this. And it's a very familiar TV thing where they're setting up what we think is a recurring villain. Like, this guy's going to be their nemesis. They're going to be dealing with him everywhere they go, and then they just kill him. He just kicks him right into the engine. And I mean, they're basically murdering the guy in cold blood. It totally contradicts what Mal says at the end of the first episode, where he's like, if I ever kill you, you'll be armed, you'll be facing me. Yeah, not so much with this guy. He was just tied up, definitely not armed. But I think it's fine for Mal to have contradictions like that. They even comment on it later several times, and in the movie they say it a lot, where he's just unpredictable. He'll pretend to be really honorable, but then he'll do something really dishonorable. He'll, rob a train and not worry about what he's robbing and doing something clearly for a very bad person, but then he finds out it's medicine and he decides to give it back. Sometimes he's really courageous, sometimes he just backs down from a fight and runs away. You just never know with Mal. I think I like that about him because it makes him seem like a real person. Nobody ever really follows their own code of honor or whatever 100%. Everybody's unpredictable. Alright, so that's all for this episode. Your homework, if you haven't seen it before, is to watch episode 3, Bushwhacked, and we will talk about that in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Okay, bye.